Throw the boss out? You mean like literally? No, not literally. For a little different perspective on your life, your job, and your small business, well, listen in. Welcome to the first show of Throw the Boss Out with Joe Leach and Jim Suhan. Thank you, Jim, for joining me.
You know, in some ways, I'm kind of the boss of this podcast network. What does this mean for me?
Why are you going to provoke me?
I'm out.
This is the first thing out of the
I know.
chute.
First thing I say on our first show, and I'm already jabbing you.
He's throwing the B word out.
Get used to it.
He's getting in my face. I think at this point, you should tell them why I'm here, because honestly, I'm not really sure why I'm here.
Well, let's clarify. This is part of my podcast network. By the time you hear this, we'll be rebranding. It'll be talknorth.com with our new website and many more news shows. And this one is one that I never thought I would do or be a part of, but I talked to you about business one time, started talking about guitars, then we ended up talking about business, and I had never been interested. I'd never been in an interesting business conversation before in my life. You made it sound interesting, intriguing, philosophical. You made it kind of relevant to my life, what I've tried to do by starting my own business. So I thought that would make a great podcast. Luckily, you thought that would make a great podcast. Now we're going to prove that it makes a good podcast with Throw the Boss Out, which is your idea for a name, which is also a great name.
So you said never. You said, I've never been in an interesting business conversation.
Well, I haven't been in many business conversations because I always thought of myself as an employee, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, I want to talk about that, actually. That's kind of how we open this up. But was that an exaggeration or a hyperbole?
Well, hyperbole can be exaggeration. I would say that it was an exaggeration more than it was hyperbole.
See, I'm going to defer to you for all of these literal things because I'm not a very literal person. I can talk and talk and talk, but I'll probably say the wrong thing.
You're verbal. So that's good
enough.
enough.
You can just look at me if I'm saying the wrong thing. We could almost like create a verbal IQ, and you can let me know when I'm just totally.
But this is not a show about grammar. Just talk like you talk, okay, and we'll be fine.
So you said something that's kind of interesting that about you've always felt like you were an employee, which is really interesting. Not knowing anything about how your arrangement is in your employment, I would assume it's more contract based than a typical
it's salaried.
thing. Yep. Oh, it is. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said I felt like an employer. I've always saw myself as an employee, and I felt that way too until one day. It was I'm thinking springtime, out in front of Kmart. I've got my '66 Ford. I'm packing up some really cheap furniture that I just bought, and I run into I got to be careful how I say this now. I ran into the woman, not literally ran into, but came in contact with. Encountered. See, there you go. This is great. I'm going to learn so many new ways to say things. I encountered the woman who was married to the person that at the time someone else had put in charge of me. Right? See, I'm being careful with this on purpose so that I can make my point. She was with a friend. She saw me. She smiled, said, "Hi, how are you doing, Joe?" And she turned to her friend and said, "Let me introduce you to Joe. He works for my husband." And shockwaves went from the tips of my toes all the way up to my head. And I was thinking to myself, I don't work for your husband. And it wasn't even just that I didn't want to work for a particular person. I thought to myself, that sounded so horrible. That made me feel so, I don't know. It was a profound moment in my life when I said, I don't work for anybody. And even if I am an employee, I work for myself. And later on, as this whole thing developed, I figured, this is really a lot more true than I thought. We all own our own small business. In some cases, it's just me incorporated. And then I go out and I get essentially one customer, which is, we refer to them as our employer. And I have the one customer that I need to keep happy. And in exchange for that, I get my revenue stream on a biweekly basis with a very defined number. And we call that a salary or an hourly wage or something like that. But it is really true. Even in, I think most of the states in the U.S., everybody is hired on an at-will basis. I know there are some exceptions where people have contracts or whatever, but for the most part, you can leave at any time, and the employer can ask you to leave at any time. How different is that from having a customer who the first day you don't deliver on what you said, they leave?
Yeah. And I never thought about that in those terms until you started speaking in those terms, which is why I wanted to do a podcast with you, because this is it's opening up my eyes, opening up my brain to some new possibilities here.
So the whole thing about bosses is, as we went on, and when I remember at that point saying to myself, if I ever have a business, I'm going to make sure I never say that. I never say this person works for me. And I'm pretty careful. I hope I don't screw up, particularly while we're talking. It's a easy thing to screw up, though, because we've been taught our whole lives the way to get ahead is to get a job and then to become the manager, maybe get a different colored shirt, a different badge, right? So that I can be in charge of people, that I can be the boss. And this is just how we work. So when someone says it, I don't ever take offense to it. I don't think that, oh, they shouldn't say that, but it just rings true with me that I need to think about that a lot differently now as I have asked people to join the team, as I've become an employer, so to speak. I want to make sure that that I look at it the same way. So when I have people who are around us that are helping us, that are employees, I think of it exactly the same way. And there's probably people out there saying, oh, I can kind of see your point, but it's different because it'd be easier for them to let me go than it would be for me to go find another job. And I don't know that I believe that.
Really?
No, I think people get it in their head that it's hard to get a new job and it prevents them from doing it. And it's very comfortable to just stay where you're at.
You're really hitting me where I live because, I always wanted to be a sports writer, and and you're hitting me where I live, and as we talk, where I live, which is, it's double jeopardy. But, I always wanted to be a sports writer, and I always worked to please my bosses, and I always worked to hone my craft, and I went up the ladder, small rung by small rung, until I finally got my dream job. And right after I got my dream job, which is the job I have now, basically my industry collapsed, and it affected how much money I made. It affected how likely what you were to get a job offer for someplace else, which even if you didn't want it is always good to get. And it made me stop thinking like that I'm in this growth industry and started making me think, God, you just ought to feel lucky you have a job given what's going on around the industry. And that's been my mindset ever since the industry started hitting trouble, is that, man, just hold on for dear life. And maybe that's not the right mentality to have in your life.
So I have to admit that I didn't realize a lot of this until after I had started a business. And a lot of it is hindsight. But when this whole concept of bosses and this climbing the ladder and being in that position, just having that driven into your brain, the lucky thing for me was when I started the business and the first person that I hired, or maybe the first two people that we hired to be on the team, I realized really quickly that I couldn't operate in that environment anyway. So even upon starting the business, if I had this idea in my head that this is great, I own the place, I get to be the boss, I get to tell people what to do, right? For me, it quickly turned into, oh, I have to tell people what to do, or I have to help people, I have to get people, going. I have the attention span of a very small insect, and so it's really difficult for me I can't control people, and I can't manage people, and I even try to stay away from that phrase altogether, managing people, because I'm not good at it. I think I might have shared with you one of the little profound sayings that a good friend of mine, whose name is Jim McCormick, I worked with him years ago. He was part of the Cook's Illustrated magazine, and I sold printing, and he and I became very, very good friends. Great guy. And he said to me one day, he said, your greatest strength is also your greatest weakness. And I remember thinking to myself, what is that? What does that mean? And what he meant, and it's so true, at that point, my greatest weakness was that I could not manage people, right? I was not capable of day to day saying, you do this and you do that. And out of that came I had no choice but to trust people, to let them make their own decisions, to take their advice, to let them be a bigger part of the decision-making process. Now, had I had the ability to control and manage and, whatever word you want to put in there, then this whole idea may not have come up. And I think our business would be radically different right now. So my greatest weakness, the inability, turned into my greatest strength, is that now I would say that we have a team of however many people it is now in the different businesses that I have, where they really are quite independent. They really make a lot of decisions themselves, and they really and our companies are successful, and people enjoy working there. If you've ever run into anybody that works in any of our companies, you can be a secret shopper for me, right? Or a secret, what would you call it?
I'll do that. I'll go over to Riff City Guitars and secretly check out all the guitars every day. I can do that.
Yeah, Jim.
Which I've done before.
Jim, it's a good thing your wife's not here. She'd know it was a scam.
She doesn't. Well, here's my relationship with my wife. I don't understand why she would ever have to go buy new clothes. I mean, everything still fits her, right?
Right.
And she doesn't understand why 3 electric guitars and 1 acoustic guitar aren't enough.
Right.
For me.
Right.
It's because I need one more. I need one more, Joe. I do. I need one more.
And guitar stores like ours, we love people like you.
I know you do. Believe me.
We were just talking this morning. You really are our profiled customer.
Yep.
Like if I was going to draw a picture of the perfect guitar store. So it's I'm sorry, I got off track. What I was saying is that you should secret shop, or you should, if you ever run into anybody that works at any of our companies, I would love for you to ask them how they like working. And I give you 100% permission to post that on any of our social media. And if at some point you run into somebody and they say, oh, they don't like their job or whatever, go ahead and post it. Because if it's true, I'm going to learn something from it. I don't think you're going to find anybody. You might find people that don't work there anymore. And that's a whole different show. The one thing I will say about our system and the way things are set up, it's not for everybody. It's a really bad system if you like to be managed.
Told what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, right. And some people, there's nothing wrong with it. And we actually have people within the organization that do prefer that, but they also kind of accept the system the way it is and know that the specific direction isn't going to be quite as detailed, and that they're going to have to kind of do some things themselves that they maybe wouldn't have to do somewhere else. And they're okay with that. But there are definitely have been people over the course of time who just could not survive in that environment because it drove them crazy. So, but we attract each other. It's what makes a great team. It's all good. It's all good.
Well, it's interesting. You're making me feel better about my efforts to run this podcast network, because I don't think I could manage people, so I don't even try to manage people. I just try to work with people. And I know you've said a couple other things about things that you thought were non-traditional, and I can do the non-traditional thing. That's about my only strength, is I can be non-traditional.
A lot of people, when I pose this to other business owners, quite often I'll get this funny look like, yeah, I think that's kind of fantasy, or maybe you think that it's working that way, but it's probably really not working that way. And another comment I get is, well, when you get to be a lot bigger, it's not, that's just not going to happen anymore. And I'm the first person to say that could be true. That could 100% be true. But that'll also be the day that I walk out. Because that would take all the fun out of it. If I had to have this, the way I explain it is, a typical business probably has an organizational chart that looks like the side of an igloo, right? Where you've got these blocks. There's one block, and these 2 blocks report to that one block, and then these 4 people report to these people. That was what I couldn't maintain that. But take a business organizational chart that looks like something you draw on a spirograph. Now that I can live with, right? It's comfortable.
Etch a sketch.
We use that. We draw that in a lot of our meetings because it drives the point home that we have every circle is a kind of a group. It could be a team, whatever you want to call it, but it's a group. It might be a department, might be a very defined department, or it could be a group of representatives from other departments that have to come together on a regular basis, and then they form a circle. And the neat thing is that leadership always fills a vacuum. So whenever you have a circle of these people, the leader emerges naturally. Nobody really even has to appoint a leader. And the other thing we see in our companies that I find fascinating and fun to watch is that one person might be a leader in one group and they're not a leader in another group. And I don't know if it's just because somebody else is a better leader in that group, or if there's a level of interest in the topic that changes or whatever. And frankly, I don't care. I just like seeing it work. And I just love to get in these meetings and I can spot the leader immediately. You know, like I said, we don't put different colored shirts on people. Those people emerge immediately. And they emerge, this is the other part of it that's great, they emerge in the opposite way that leaders are typically picked. Traditionally, you find the person you trust the most, you say, boom, I want you to lead the team. And that person might even just say, I want to be a leader. That's another topic we'll talk about in a moment here. I want to be the leader, and you appoint the leader, and then you say to everybody, there's your leader, now follow that person. And only about half the people relate to that person, and the other half are possibly even resentful that somebody said, hey, this person's now your leader. In our environment, the leader is naturally picked by the followers. They become the leader because the people trust them, so that you can tell that because that's who they ask the questions of. You can, I love picking up verbal and non-verbal cues from people. You're in a meeting, and when the leader talks, everybody's looking at him or her. And it's been fun. It's been fun. I personally think it can go quite a bit beyond where we're at. So I'm excited to keep that going.
Well, no, it's going to be a great series of conversations. And, you know, most of my podcasts obviously are sports, and you're reacting to current events and what happened yesterday, what's going to happen next week, who's going to win the game. This is going to be a different experience because this is going to be, sometimes we will pull from the headlines, but a lot of this is going to be, you know, philosophy, you know, Socrates and Plato and those guys.
Right. Plato, he's my favorite.
Yeah, but a lot of it is just you have so many different ideas that are worth exploring that a podcast format is perfect because we can just sit down and just go.
Yeah, I'm up for it. No, I'm glad we had that conversation. I'm glad the idea of a podcast came up, even though I still don't know what a podcast
I don't either, but we'll figure it out.
Does anybody know why they call it a podcast?
Yes.
You do?
Because iPods.
Oh.
So the idea was, here's a show you can listen to on your iPod, so it's a podcast.
I was thinking that where we're sitting right now, you would refer to this as a pod.
This is a pod, but that's a really weird, different kind of thing.
Right. Like I didn't know if we had to go. And when you invited me, I didn't know if we were going to go to a pod, if there was going to be this
is a pod.
This plastic thing that a door would open up and I would enter into the pod. And
it's a pod, and one of these days I'll teach you how to get
things.
out.
We would just cast things out of the pod, and I wasn't 100% sure. I thought we were going to have a meeting about podcasts. We were going to have a podcast meeting, all the podcast rules, but that never happened.
I don't like meetings, so we're not going to do meetings. We're just going to do the podcast.
That's good.
By the way, this in itself is a business. It is my podcast business, and this is our podcast within the business. And we are going to sell advertising on this show. If you'd like to, the cool thing about the show is we're going to be reaching a lot of business leaders, a lot of people who are interested in business. And we will sell advertising. If you ever want to advertise on the program, send me an email at jsouhan@startribune.com, and we'll work it out, or I'll hook you up with Joe. Joe will probably handle most of the stuff that goes on with this podcast.
Good to know.
Yes. You're going to be the boss of this, whether you want to be or not.
Brutal. Brutal.
I already screwed up the whole philosophy.
And just so you know, within our organization, we have, we'll talk about this as we go on, but we have swear words that are not traditional swear words. And boss is the B word. So I will not only will I not say that anybody works for me, but I won't even allow them to say they work for me. And if they it's typical that someone will say, "This is my boss," particularly if they're introducing me. And I always stop and just go, "Oh, that's the B word. Can't use the B word." You can use other traditional swear words in our companies all you want. As a matter of fact, I find them to be quite effective at times. And
they
if
are.
used correctly, the swear words, the ones we're all familiar with, I find can be quite useful.
I've actually read a bunch of studies because I'm that kind of a geek. I've read studies about swear words, and they have two great advantages. I think they have a lot of advantages, but they're two really clear advantages.
Dying to hear this.
One is they do kind of like relieve stress. You say bleep, 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 bleep. It does kind of get stuff out of your system. The other thing it does is people who are listening to you speak, if they hear you swear, they are more likely to believe what you're saying.
Let me add this is very important if you don't do it all the time.
Right. Yeah. It's got to be, you're right. It can't be a bad habit. It's got to be a point of emphasis.
Yeah, no, and I get that. If you, as a child, the first time you hear your parents say like one of the really bad words, it like your whole life changes at that moment because you know something new has just occurred in your life. You know, I agree with the relieving stress thing, but we have another. I'm just going to go on to this. We have another swear word. It's the S word, and it's a particular pet peeve of mine, and it became clear to me why once I got into business. The S word that we do not allow people to say is sucks.
I'm glad you said that because I hate that word. I really do. And I slip. I'm not saying I've never said it, but I don't like it. We don't allow it in the Star Tribune. And it is.
Oh, really?
No. Yeah,
so there's like a written rule saying you can't use that word?
You cannot get that word in the Star Tribune. Well,
not just in writing, but they don't even want you saying it.
Oh, no, I'm talking about writing.
Gotcha.
I'm talking about writing, but and I'm saying that I don't like the word. And
do you know why?
To me, it's a lot of reasons. I'm not sure if you think about the word, whether you would really want to use it. I don't like the way it sounds, and it sounds kind of just like a petty complaint.
It's the epitome of a bad attitude.
Yeah, it is. This sucks. I mean, right. Well, come on. You can do better than that.
We have a lot of people start that. This is part of the orientation. And this is funny. We had several admin people over the years, or HR people, but this gal that we have as our admin person is like, I can't imagine her ever saying a swear word, right? But she's put to the task to say to people, "Oh yeah, you're starting here today, and we're going through all this stuff. And by the way, there's a few swear words you can't say around here." And so I've never witnessed it. I've never witnessed her telling people this, but I know she does because oftentimes somebody will say it, and they're new. I'll just give them the look, not a mean look, but just give them the glance, and they all say, "Oh, sorry, forgot about that." I tell people use the F word.
Yeah.
If you are not using the F word at people, right, or just because if you're using it at people, that's a whole different thing. But sometimes things just need to be emphasized, right? And that's okay, in my opinion.
Bleeping right.
But don't, right. This is a podcast, though, so I did read somewhere you can swear
absolutely
on a podcast, whereas you maybe couldn't do it on the radio or something
absolutely
like that.
True. And here's our experience with that. When we started doing, so many of us had done or are still doing traditional radio where you can't swear. When we started doing podcasts, we just started cussing like crazy because it was fun and you could do it.
Right.
And then we started building an audience, and then all of a sudden we're getting emails from parents. I was listening to the podcast in my car, and my kids are in the back seat. So we developed a policy that we swear, but we bleep out the swearing. So you get the effect, you get the idea of it, but we're not going to offend.
So, all right. So we know two of our swear words already. I don't know. What is there, as we do this, do you want to cue me up on some things that you want me to talk about? Is there some shows we can kind of tease the listeners with that?
Well, I want to talk about business philosophy. I want to talk about just the mechanics of putting together a business. I want to talk, but honestly, as is the case with so many of my other shows, the best parts of these shows are when we go off on a tangent or talk about something we didn't expect to talk about, or go stream of consciousness.
I'm so good at that.
So I want to start each show with an idea, but then I want to just go wherever we go. And
you just created a dream job for me.
Yeah, and we'll probably get to a point where we'll take Facebook or Twitter questions and all that. But let's do a couple shows where we just kind of set the basis for all this, and then we'll get to those things. We'll do some interactive stuff as well.
So you're saying all those notes, you just want me to get rid of them?
No, I want you to have them. Well, I want you to have them, write them down, and then put them
notes
aside.
See, I was trying to be responsible here. Now you're literally giving me a reason, or you're giving me an excuse to be completely irresponsible in this
Yes,
thing. I'm really
exactly
excited.
what I'm doing.
So I was excited about doing podcast number 1. Now I'm really excited to do the rest of them because you pretty much just gave me permission to just show up, put a microphone in my face, and talk about business. That's a dream job.
That's how we do.
But we have to have advertisers to make this work.
Yes, eventually we will attract advertisers and we will make some money off this. And of course, we will serve our advertisers by reaching an audience they want to reach.
See, a moment ago when you talked about the advertising thing, I guess that was the first point in time in which I realized we don't already have advertisers.
We do not.
See, I thought we were going to start. I thought we were going to hit the ground running here, Jim.
I would like to, but we got to practice before we can run. We need some practice laps.
All right. So we'll both work on getting advertisers. Yep. If anybody is listening that knows me, that just wants to throw us a little bit of a bone here, send in some advertising money. I don't even know how the rates work, so we'll get to the bottom. Call me. We'll talk advertising.
Absolutely.
All right.
As you can tell, we're highly organized.
Are there? There's no particulars you can think of off the top of your head, though, that you want me to.
I mean, honestly, you and I have talked off the air about all kinds of different ideas. I feel like you already have like the first 10, 20 shows.
Yeah, I have. I think we can. I think the areas that I feel strong enough to talk about, that I feel comfortable that if I'm trying to tell somebody else how to do something or give some advice, that would be, I'm really good at the business development side of things, sales. We talked about sales. I absolutely love the analytics side of things. We have 2 retail businesses that have a very strong online presence. So I've really dug into the AdWords things and the analytics and made so many mistakes that I can share with people that you don't have to go down that same path and waste a bunch of money doing things that you didn't do.
You and I have talked about that, and I think that will make for a great show or two.
If people can hang in there with me, it's I don't know if it'll be a sleepy topic or not, but these values that we have are really important to what we do. We basically have, there's 18 different values. There's 6 main values that we all kind of live by in the companies. And we talk about them on a regular basis. And so we could have a show about some of those. Maybe we'll just have a show about values and see what people think if they want to expand into those individual values. We can do that. And I'll put a Twitter page up for Throw the Boss Out. A Facebook page. You can throw some ideas up there. If anybody knows me, just send me a message. I'll be happy to talk about. I just want to talk about what other people want to talk about. I want to make, if there's anything that I would like to come out of this, is just that whoever listens thinks differently. Mm-hmm. I'm not even going to go as far as to say I want you to be smarter or better or wiser or whatever. If at the end of this, you're spending the next few minutes just thinking about what was talked about and it's a new way to, explore what's going on, then I think we've done something. I think that's the best we can do. I love to tell the story about my dad, who was the art teacher, and he very, very different. He looked at things very differently than most people. Not just because he was an art teacher, but he was just like that in life. And he used to always say in school, he would come home from school, and if he was frustrated, it was almost always because he would say, we have to stop teaching these kids how to memorize things, and we have to start teaching these kids how to learn. Oh. And
my wife's a first grade teacher, and she says exactly the same thing every day.
Yeah, it's and if you think about it in your professional life, actually in your personal life, right, anything, whenever you learn something, you don't just learn how to do something. You've learned how to learn. Like, you've opened up new pathways in your brain of how to think, and you can apply that to so many different things. And so if that's the whole thing of making a mistake. When you make a mistake, you learn way more than you do when you have a success, right? But what do? We get disappointed when we make a mistake. No need to get disappointed if you're making a mistake. You got to look at it from a standpoint of, and in business, if people want to start their own business, that's going to be a lesson you'll want to learn very, very quickly. And the lesson is not that take your lumps. The lesson is just get over it pretty quickly, because the pain you're feeling of not accomplishing what you accomplished is quickly replaced, hopefully, with the thought that, well, I've learned something new.
Absolutely. I've learned way more than I would have imagined just running my my little business here that we're trying to get rolling. And this is going to be a great weekly lesson for me as we go forward.
It will be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, so if anybody has ideas, send them on. Otherwise,
what's the best way for them to reach you?
So I think the Twitter, going on, Throw the Boss Out has a Twitter page, as well as Facebook. If you like one platform over the other, those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me at this point.
Perfect. He's Joe Leach. I'm Jim Suhan. This is Throw the Boss Out, and we're going to be coming at you weekly, whether you like it or not.
Talk to you next week.